So I want to welcome everybody to this our end of the month, and our guest is Russell Cook. And I will tell you a few things that I know. I've known of Russell's dulcimers longer than I've known him, which is probably the case with most people. You know, you don't really meet the people until you're in a festival or something like that. And I will tell, and I have one, but I will tell you this, that as far as reputation, as far as quality, as far as working with somebody, like somebody backing their product, they are top notch on that stuff. They're a great sounding instrument, but you know, a lot of times, and I got to be real careful here. There was a dulcimer company that I had at one time. I got to be real careful here. And I ordered dampers on it. And when the dampers came, there was a chunk of wood missing, like about that long, and it came off the top. And I had paid a lot of money. I mean, a lot of money to have those put on, plus the shipping. And it was a big instrument. And when I got it and that was missing, they said this, well, can't you just glue it back on? And I'm like, no. I just paid a bunch of money and it came damaged, and they were irritated at me because I refused. And I said, no, I said, I want this fixed. And I didn't send it back, but they sent me a new damper. But honestly, no matter what I think of that particular company, I won't recommend that company because I don't want, how many see what I'm talking about? I don't want to deal with somebody who's irritated at me for something that, you know, and Masterworks is not like that. I will guarantee you that. So I'm going to give it to Russell. I'm going to pin him on my end if you want to pin him on yours. And I'm going to just give it to him. He's going to talk about whatever he wants to talk about, promote his products. He could promote his workshops. Russell, whatever you want to do, it's all yours.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here and visiting with Brett and I know many of you are not hammer dulcimer players, so I would think maybe sort of the background story of how I got started playing hammer dulcimer. I never saw one before. I did not know what a hammer dulcimer was when my brother-in-law brought a kit he had bought in Colorado at the Hughes Dulcimer Company. They made kits for all kinds of folk instruments. Well, he and his friend Dana Hamilton that he worked with, taught school with, had gotten an album. Someone had sent an album to Dana Hamilton because he liked folk music. He plays banjo, fiddle, and all that sort of thing. Anyway, long story short, they went on vacation and wound up in Colorado and heard about Hughes Dulcimer Company and went in and purchased the most expensive hammer dulcimer kit they had, which was $39.95, and had little guitar tuners for tuning. And you know, you'd tune it up and you'd play a couple of tunes, then you have to just stop and retune it. It was a fun thing to put together, but it wasn't really usable. And so they immediately started working on how to get a good instrument. They were going to buy one. And they got so much information, they built one for themselves, and it turned out pretty good. And I was playing guitar with them probably once a month, just having fun, jamming and such. And so they talked me into going to the very first Dulcimer Festival at Mountain View, Arkansas at the Ozark Folk Center. And that was in 79, spring of 79. Right. And I came back like a deer in the headlights. It blew my mind. It was great, had great musicians, great folks, and it was just a great atmosphere. There were people from the West Coast, people from way up north, and so on. Just great names, many who are gone or don't play, but Jay Round was a phenomenon. You know, probably have heard of Kathy Barton. She was there. And anyway, so I had to build my own instrument because I couldn't afford to buy one. I was a first-year school teacher and put myself through college. My wife's still in school, putting her through. So I was driving a school bus after teaching all day and lo and behold, there was an old piano under a shade tree in front of a house up on the hill. And well, it won't hurt to ask. So I just stopped, walked up there, didn't have any kids in the bus, and asked if by chance I could have that piano or have parts of it to build an instrument I was interested in. And they said, "I'll just have at it, anything you want. We're going to haul it away someday." So yeah, that's how I built my first instrument, was that and some materials that my uncle gave me, and took the tuning pins out of it and had piano tuning pins and such. And it worked, except I couldn't tune it up to the right pitch. It was about 6 inches too wide. I was of the opinion, if a little bit does a little bit of good, a whole lot does a whole lot of good, without putting the common sense and logic of science. So anyway, I learned a great lesson. I looked like I had chicken pox from all the strings breaking and popping my hand. I gave many blood samples for that, but got some more information, built my second one, and it was very successful. That was June. So all this happened in just a matter of 6 or 8 weeks. And 10 days later, there was a little Western Days is what they called it in Durant. It was the big city to us. That it was 20 miles away. It's about 10,000 people. But anyway, it was a fun festival. They had a little talent contest. We'll just go play some tunes and just to show off the weird instrument that I play. Well, lo and behold, they gave me the trophy, probably because I was the weirdest one there and the weirdest instrument. But it was very inspiring. It was very important activity. I don't know what you would call that, but it lit a fire. Playing and trying to get better. And people actually liked this. I didn't think anybody was going to like it except me. And so from there on, it was a matter of, I started experimenting. I taught for a couple of more years at school, and we decided we wanted to go to the real city, Dallas-Fort Worth. Wound up in Arlington on the south side of town. And I built 36 or 38 instruments in that 2-year period, just experiment, every one of them completely different. And very educating for me. So got a call. Somebody said, "Hey, you need to go talk to these folks in downtown Fort Worth. They're putting in an artist." They called it Plaza de Arts, but it was about 40 different artists, painters, weavers, everything you can think of. And they wanted an instrument builder. So 2 weeks later, I left my job and I was doing that full time. And of course, I was much slimmer during those days than I am now. It was a rough couple of years, but a year and a half later, I realized that I needed more information. I needed to go out and see other dulcimer players. I needed to see other instruments and go to festivals. And I wound up from coast to coast, from Michigan to South Texas, and I got an eyeful there for about 6 or 8 months. And that was another momentous turn of the instrument designs that I built. So it was just slowly, progressively being exposed to something new and so on. And it's never changed. I mean, 7 years ago, I never thought of making an extended range instrument. Ted Yoder started bugging me. He wanted more notes. He played a D650 and had all those extra low notes. So I put 3 on there. He already had 3. About 3 months later, he came back and said, "I want more." So I put another 3 on. And then about a year later, he came back and said, "I want the whole thing up and down that level. I don't care if it collapses the instrument. It wasn't designed for all those notes." And that he said, "I want a new one. Build me a new one that's designed the way you think it ought to be." And so that was the beginning of the extended range model. And about 3 years after that, he and Joshua Messick, Jess Dickinson, others. I'm leaving somebody out of, I can't think, but these really good players, they loved the sound of our instruments, but they just it wasn't that big of an instrument. It didn't go way down low with those big bass notes. And so I started studying and designing and trying to come up with something that would still be like a Russell Cook edition in tone, but go down farther. And that was a huge turn, obviously, for us. And it keeps us busy. The Russell Cook edition extended range and the Dulce Forte extended range. So that's how I wound up building dulcimers and where our designs came from some of my own ideas, but also just seeing what other people are doing and maybe not copying them, but using that way of thinking. How can I do that? Like dampers. I knew I needed to have dampers. This was a long time ago. And I had, who was it that was with it? Kelly, Corey, somebody was with me. And a friend from back east was visiting who was into dulcimers. And so we spent 2 or 3 days just talking dulcimer design. We started off with electric motors operating the dampers. And of course, that didn't work out when we started studying the expense of it. But I wanted the dampers to rotate. Let me see if I can switch this. Hang on. So what I wound up with is, this is the damper. It rotates on a gear right here, a handmade wooden one. And when you press the cable that attaches to this and goes underneath here, it's just a bicycle cable. And you press the pedal, the cable pulls the damper down. And it does one on both sides. So it's smooth, it's quiet, and so easy. You're not dictated to put the pedal right in the center underneath where strings go down to it. You have to stand there and play with your foot. I'm looking for it. Where's that? There it is. And operate the damper. And your left foot's behind you, maintaining balance. So that was the motivation for that type of damper system. Well, anyway, that brings you up to date where we are. We have 7 employees, but 4 of them are part-time. And yep, Miss Merla is my supervisor. She tells me what I need to do. And then I get somebody to do it. So I'm going to walk out here to the workshop. While I do that, someone asked about how did Quarantune come to be, and it is it's a story all its own. It's not big, it's not long, but simply I panicked when the pandemic started, basically February of 2020. It hit me. There were no festivals, there were no concerts, there were no jamming, there were no workshops, there were no lessons. The dulcimer world is about to go away. It's going to be tragic and it's going to be fast. And I was just depressed. I was depressed for weeks. And we still had some orders to fill, but I knew nothing was going to come in. They couldn't work, they couldn't make money. And finally something came on. I think a morning news program, someone had released they were having a concert. Just an online 1-person concert. And they played one of their songs. And why couldn't we have somebody in California and somebody in New York and somebody in Texas lined up and 2 or 3 people do a concert, and kept thinking about it. But why couldn't you have workshops that way? I knew people that taught individually online. Why couldn't we have a group of people doing that? And I said something about it to my son, Corey, just in passing. And he's, oh, Dad, that's the best idea you've ever had in the Dulcimer community. So I knew it was a good idea, and it was, it's not like I would require a genius to think of it, but I was motivated by my depression of what I thought was going to happen. And so I asked a younger guy that is just a great technology wizard, never went to college, but just near genius. And he said, absolutely, that's a great idea. We need to do that. I don't have time. And so that didn't help, but it did encourage me. Well, maybe this really is a good idea. And finally, I thought of Jess Dickinson, a good friend in Mississippi, plays hammer dulcimer, is a state Supreme Court justice, and was retired my age. He still is trying to retire now. But I called him one morning, and I started off with my first thought about doing something online, like a dulcimer festival. And he cut me off, said, I'm all in. It's a great idea. We got to do that. We got to. And so that's how it started. And of course, between he and I, we thought of all the dulcimer players we could think of in the United States and started contacting them. And we put the first festival together just purely from sharing ideas and information. Yes. Yeah, basically we had 2 months to put it together for the first one. And it was all volunteer. Everybody worked together. Everybody was shut down. Everybody was excited about it. And then we did the second one after that. And we started seeing, well, these people are particularly important. They have a knowledge and a concept of what needs to be done, and just sheerly intelligent. And after, I think, the third one, thereabouts, we decided, just settled in on these 5 people, Jess and Mark Allen Wade, Stephen Seifert, Katie Moritz, and myself, and created the Quarantune LLC. Basically, it's just an organization, and continued from there. And then after about 5, it was running all 5 of us ragged. Mark was having to and Stephen Seifert were having to cut back on their lessons, which was taking money out of their pocket to get the work done and progress. So it has become LLC, and we just take the some of the sponsorship money and T-shirt sales profit, and that pays a small stipend to the guys that put it all together. And concert, yeah. And that's how it's run now. It's much smoother. We still have changes and problems. You just, when something popped up, you figure out how to fix it, and it's progressed on. But anyway, and that's a longer explanation than I probably should have invested in, but that's how Quarantune has come to be. Just a few statistics which are inaccurate because I don't keep those numbers perfectly all the time, but about 5,000 different people have participated in the festival from 15 different countries, and that was months ago. We do have teachers from other countries, Japan, Great Britain, France, Wales. Well, Wales is Great Britain, but there's another one. I think we're working on someone in Australia, maybe. I've forgotten now. And then I'm not even going to guess at the amount of money that we have, that we've written checks to teachers who were shut down for 2 years. We've had numerous emails and messages from performers who said the only way they kept their house, the only way, was the money they got from Quarantune during that time. And so the purpose, our purpose of the festival, the mission, is to bring the Dulcimer community together, even more so than they've ever been before, and to help folks learn who can't go to a festival. They don't have that opportunity. We've gotten so many messages from folks about that. And then, of course, to help performer teachers not leave the Dulcimer community to get a regular job, to make a living, to try to give folks an opportunity to do what they love, just like Brett, and make music and teach and support others in their music endeavors. So that is the foundation of the Quarantune Festival, and that's how it came to be. And I'm sure it will change and evolve as time goes by. And we're always interested in other folks' ideas, thoughts, issues that you might have in doing the festival. So we appreciate anyone who ever has the inkling to try it. It's so easy. If you've never done it, just like Brett here sent you a link, or you go to a place on the website where there's a link, you just get a link, hit it, and you're in on Zoom. All you got to do is be a Zoom subscriber.
Somebody, Pat said, I'm blown away with the amount of organization to put Quarantune together. And by the way, so am I. Like, I was part of the first couple, like,
yeah.
The part, and I'll be honest, I did very, very little, because I wasn't, and I even wrote Jess. I said, Jess, I don't even know what I'm doing here. And he says, no, you're doing great. But then when they cut it down, I'm thinking there were a whole bunch working on it. And then I think of the poor people. When I say poor, the people doing it now, I still can't imagine how they're handling any of this. They've got to be overwhelmed, and I will say this, they do an excellent job. And I'll also say this has kept me alive too, the Quarantune. They're if you haven't done it, you need to at least try it, because it is really great. Okay.
It is. A lot of folks say it's the best part is it's like you are the only student. You're right there face to face with the teacher. And most of us have 2 cameras. I have 3. One on the instrument, one on me when I'm talking, and one on graphics that I'm switching the old-fashioned way on a what do you call that? A painter's. Anyway, that has been very helpful, I think, for a lot of folks. But concerning those that you just talked about, those folks who are putting this together, really the technology and all of that and all the hard work. Some in the group absolutely were fanatic. No, we are not taking money. This is all just volunteer based. And I saw exactly what you are thinking about, Brett. They were suffering. It was bothering their family. It was challenging them with their own personal business jobs and all. And finally, I saw Katie she just really was overwhelmed. And I talked to the others. And I said, I am begging you to start paying them a salary of some small amount, not enough to make a living, of course, just to make up for what they're having to give up to be able to do all this work, because it's more than you can probably imagine. I just am overwhelmed at watching them and seeing how they put it together. So enough about Quarantune, unless anybody has any other questions. I'm turning the camera around. Yeah, now you can see somebody better looking than I. So I'm here in the workshop. I'm going to set this like this. That's a little better. So my little window is small. So we have lots and lots of folks drive long distances, actually, and they come here they have a Masterworks, or they're wanting to get one, but they want to see where the instrument is built. And so this is exactly how we start, by unloading thousands of board feet, many thousands of pounds of it by hand. We just got this material in Thursday, and that board right here is about 18 inches wide, 4 inches thick, and 12 foot long, and probably weighs about 300 pounds. So some folks come in and say, well, where do you buy your soundboards and where do you buy your pin blocks? And you don't buy anything except tuning pins and strings. You gotta make it by hand. And so this is the beginning. I went on a tour of Taylor guitars. If you're familiar with guitar builders, they're quite well known and performed by guitar performers. Anyway, they started the tour by going outside and going around to the back of the building, and they had tents set up in the parking lot, and they were full of mahogany just like this size. And the reason is a soundboard has to be vertical grain wood. The grain, and actually, if you can, let me see if you can see this right here. That right there. I don't know if you can see it. Yes, you can see the little lines, the vertical lines. That's vertical grain. That's very rare. Most of the time, grain is running left and right like this. It's hard to do like that across it. And that would be flat sawn on top if the grain's going sideways. So we buy in this dimension, this is called 16 quarters, which is 4 inches, 4 quarters per inch. We will actually rip, not this board, but a normal board that is flat sawn, we will rip it this way into slices, just one after another, like that, and stack them up, keep them organized. And then we'll take those pieces, say this is one of those pieces, it's not, but just say it is. Not doing a very good job. Here we go. So that's just a thin piece. This is real thin. It's not that thin. But that stack of them, one after another, we'll flip them that way, then flip it that way, then flip it that way, and flip it that way. Those pieces will actually wind up spread out and glued together to create a soundboard. I'll see if I can find some. Let me walk back here. Nope, there's not any glued up back there. They must all have all of them finished and in the finish room. I mean, in the assembly room. And then you have this. Yeah, I'm gonna walk in here and see if I can just show you a soundboard. A finished one, ready to glue up. So this is what I call the most important room in the workshop. It is jigs for gluing instruments together and using clamps and clamps and clamps and more clamps. Okay. As many clamps as there are here, and there are many more in the workshop, sometimes you can't find one. They're all being used. Yep. So here is a finished soundboard, and you're not going to be able to see it. You cannot see where it starts and stops. That looks like just a solid piece of wood, but it's not. It's those pieces flip-flop book matched across and glued together. Nope. After they rip it down the edge, you cannot see where each piece is. But anyway, take my word for it. It's several pieces of wood from the same board, sliced up, book matched across, and then squeezed together to create a soundboard, and a back, same way. Then we put the body, this is an internal end rail. This is the pin block right here that the tuning pins will be in. That's why all the holes in it. And of course, there's another one on the other side. There's the short end rail. Here's the right pin block. And this will be glued down on top of the pin block and on top of this end rail. And the body will then be glued together. And then all the sanding and grinding starts to take place. Of course, there's braces inside and support rods under the soundboard. But every model is a little different. The Russell Cook edition and the Dulce Forte, the main two differences between those instruments is one is asymmetrical, where this side is a long angle. Let me see if you can see that. Get the two together. Here we go. So it goes way down there at an angle, and here it's shorter. It just goes a little more vertical. I'll show you look down on an actual instrument in a little bit in the showroom. A Russell Cook edition, like most hammer dulcimers, is symmetrical. The shape is exactly the same, just like this soundboard. Can you hold this, Merla? So hopefully you can see the angles on the left and right are exactly the same, just opposite. That's symmetrical. Okay, let's do this.
Hey, real quick, somebody
Yes.
asked how to maximize his picture. If you go to his frame, go to the upper right-hand corner, there's 3 dots, and you could put pin, and Russell will be, you could see his picture, it'll cover the whole screen, and you'll see everybody else much, much smaller. Okay.
All right.
Sorry about that.
So here you can see this soundboard is asymmetrical. It's not symmetrical. The angle on one side is steeper and more drawn out on the other. We usually use elliptical sound holes in the Dulce Forte and round ones in the other models. The braces are tapered. There's no need to have wood so tall on the left side, and then again on the right side. Let me set this up here by itself. There. Now this is the shape of our braces. The reason is we're trying to make instruments as light as possible. The extra wood, as you get towards the end of the board, is pretty useless. This is where the instrument is trying to bow, is in the middle. The strings are going up over the bridges and pushing down really, really hard on the soundboard. So it's all a balance of being lightweight, but strong enough without being too strong, too stiff. So after we get the body that's there on this jig clamped up and cured, the glue is dry, we then grind the end rails down real flat and go to our selection of exotic woods from all over the world that I've sized up, matched up for the external end rails, the part that you actually see. So right here is Asian Padauk. This is Hawaiian Koa. That is 2. That is Canary wood. Not a real good example. This is Padauk, which is just a red. This is mystery wood. We've lost track of what the name of it is, but it's beautiful. I can't remember the name, but that is literally orange wood. Whenever you sand it down and put lacquer on it, it turns orange. It's amazing. Oh, yep. And this is the most rare piece of wood I have here. And this is black and white ebony. I got that on my website. I've had people from other countries say, I would like to buy every little sliver of leftover you've got. I suppose they make fancy ink pens or something like that. This is Purple Heart. And whenever it's wet down, let me see here. Here, you can hold that. I don't have to hold it. You can see what you're pointing at. I'm looking at what I'm pointing at, not the actual product. But that simulates what it will look like whenever you get finish on it. Now here's a piece of walnut. It's sort of curly, pretty, but whenever you put the lacquer, and I'm simulating with water, all of a sudden you see all the gorgeous curl in it. So when I take pictures, there's another one. This is Babinga. It's very popular. Got it? Just look at that grain. Get in there closer and show. That is gorgeous. I've got quite a lot of that. I had the chance to here, let me hand me my. This is a piece of koa. That's pretty. Once you put the water on it, you see that iridescent curl all up and down the board. The end rail really doesn't have a lot to do with the voice of the instrument. It's structural. It's just covering, cover up all the glue joints and such. This is just ash. No, sorry, white oak, curly white oak. And that stains really, really well. We stained a lot of different soundboard colors for folks, but my granddaughter asked if I'd build her a hammer dulcimer years ago, and I did. And I said, well, what color do you want the soundboard? She said blue. She wanted turquoise blue. And she said, and I want it to be all over the body. The whole thing is blue. So we did, and it went viral, sort of. People loved it. So we do statements all over. So these are parts that are prepared, honeycombs. So any questions about the most important room in the workshop? So I showed you all those pieces of wood that room collected there years ago and sliced up to make end rails for Russell Cook editions and ultralights and such. When we started making the Dulce Forte, they're short. So go shopping, looking for exotic woods. There's one that's absolutely as pink as you can imagine. It's just pure bright pink. These are pin blocks that we, these are blanks, and they're 24-inch. Some use 22, and then Dulce Forte is much larger. That's separated. In fact, right here is a Dulce Forte blank. It's about 52 inches long. But every model is a little different. The tune pin patterns are a little different, which makes the bridges a little different. So we'll go in here to the holy room. This is the holiest room in the workshop because it has bridges and bridges and bridges and bridges of all kinds with lots and lots of holes. And in these, the Russell Cook edition and the Dulce Forte, the holes, let me find it. There it is, are not round. They're sometimes oblong. This is an ultralight. Whoop, I better put it in the right place. Somebody be screaming at me. But this is what the holes look like in this bridge. They are oblong and angled. And the same thing in the rest. This is a Russell Cook edition bridge. But every model's a little different. We built those bridges up there, and Russell came up with a better idea. So they're still sitting there and probably will be when I play my last tune. But this room is all the stringing and tuning, stringing and tuning and stringing and tuning takes place. And Amy Ward is our primary stringer. She's been with us almost 2 decades. This is an instrument it's complete. That is Macassar Ebony. I have no earthly idea what it really costs. Now, I've had that board for years and years. You can see, let me turn the light on. You can see a little strip of ebony along the edge of the instrument. And then also back here, going down the center of that trim. And it has a black soundboard. The bridges, hang on, there. The bridges have white markers with abalone, and the sound holes are what's holding this instrument up. The artist it just finished the design, hopefully today, if not tomorrow, and she'll be sending that to us, and we will cut it out back in the laser room. This is a cranberry stain. I left on a trip to a festival. We were building Pioneers, and we had brown stain or just natural. And so I told them, guys, somebody come up with a good idea for a new color of stain. And when I came back, they had made a cranberry colored Pioneer. And I thought, that's shocking. I like that. And so we sent 2 or 3 of them out to some stores, and they sold immediately. So that became a standard. Let me show this from this other side. This is a really unique piece of wood. Hope I'm not making you dizzy. This I call crazy Bocati. It is just wild. We made an instrument like this for Pam Bowman up in Michigan, great player, teacher. And I said, well, we need to have one of those to sell. Here's one that's not sold. I just sort of dreamt up a design. This is maple with curly Shedua trim, and then a dark black wood as pinstriping. And it is curly maple end rail. Right. Okay, hang on. Show you one more, and I'll get to something else. This person wanted I'll think of it. Canary wood end rails, and she said pick out the most primary color other than normal brown wood and use that for the binding. And that's what we did. There is a purplish grain running through that canary wood. That's what makes it why they call it canary. Yeah, I was talking about dampers before. Oh, this is Patrick, can't think of his last name, Caskey. Patrick Caskey's gorgeous piece of curly hoe. I don't know if I'll ever get any more like that before in the future, but gorgeous. He wanted round sound holes in it. So I'll go back to the workshop, show you a little bit more about the building process. Anybody have any questions?
I do, but I'm going to wait. I did want to ask, why are the sound holes different on the 2 different bridges?
The round sound holes are smaller. The Dulce Forte has so much space between the bridges and the pin blocks and such. It needed a bigger sound hole, but I really didn't want to make it bigger vertically for strength purposes.
And then Pat asked, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Pat asked, how long approximately does it take to build one start to finish?
I literally don't know. Because if you just set up and build one instrument, it takes forever. If you'll set up and build 10 or 15 parts, right. Sometimes we'll make 30 sets of pin blocks at the same time.
Okay.
It's much more efficient. But to answer your question, all I can say is we build about 300 instruments a year. But the number of man hours. No.
I think you're frozen, Russell.
Oh, out make soundboards a while ago. Uh-oh. Yep. Can you see me?
No,
I'm coming
now,
back.
yeah, now it's
Now
working.
you can. Okay. Yep. We're watching a movie or a series on Amazon. No, on Netflix called Glitch. Anyway, somehow or another, these folks come back from the dead, and whenever they get to an edge, they drop off. They die, and so I have the same thing here in the workshop. When I get too far, my Wi-Fi. An odd comparison, I know. So this is where we do a lot of pin blocks and bridges, drilling holes. I have no idea how many drill presses we have in the workshop now. They're relatively inexpensive as woodworking goes, but we have them set up for special purposes and are allowed to get all the jigged up and prepared for that particular process. Yep, this is our shop supervisor and our main craftsman, Larry. He's been with us 25 years. He reminds me of that. And most of his work, most
You're too close to the edge.
binding the he jigging, make a bunch of pin block, and then someone say again.
I said you're close. You were too close.
Cutting out.
You were, yes.
Oh, glitch. Yes. Too far away. Again, I forgot about it. We have the same problem with our telephone. You know, you got a cordless telephone system, but when you get to the middle of the workshop, that's as far as you can go. You can't go any farther.
Huh.
So this is an important piece of equipment. We really only have two super special pieces of equipment in our workshop. I told you about how we glue the panels together to make a soundboard. They are imperfect. They're quite imperfect when you get through clamping them up. They're not perfectly flat. So we glue them up a little extra thick, and then we put them through this piece of equipment here called a time saver. And most all cabinet shops have one. It's pretty big, pretty expensive, but man, is it a time saver. And it makes perfect flat soundboards. If you can see in there, there is a sanding belt right there. And this is what they look like here. That's about 3 foot in diameter. Of course, it's shaped, it goes up and over and then down below. And you put a panel through here on this conveyor belt. You adjust the height, how thick you want it to go. And slowly but surely you go through pass after pass after pass, and it generates a perfectly flat panel. Yeah, that's how big they are. So that's a time saver, a surfacing sander. And then the other is a big heavy duty bandsaw to slice those big timbers over there into thin slices like that right there by running it through this bandsaw. This is a spring loaded, let me get it down here. This holds the board up against this surface so it goes through the blade cutting perfectly flat and smooth. So I'll slip in here to the clean room and can you see me there?
Yes.
I went too far, glitched. So we won't go to the clean room. One special thing, hopefully I'll still be able to go to this door right here. This is an enclosed porch, and I'll just point out there. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay. That little red and white building out there is not a storage shed. That's a separate workshop, small workshop for building bridges. The bridge does two things. It creates a length, a vibrating string length, but its real purpose is to transfer the vibrating energy of a string into the soundboard, and then the soundboard magnifies it. What the soundboard's made out of and what that bridge is made out of is incredibly important. And I really feel like a lot of builders don't take it seriously. It colors the voice of the instrument tremendously. And so, 35 years ago, I was building, and I'll turn this camera around. There we go. I would build instruments at a time and string them up, tune them, jump in the truck and drive to a festival. And I'd tune and play and demonstrate at the festival, and then they would buy the instruments they liked, and I was left with the rest. So several times in a row, I would wind up with new instruments in stock that I'd just finished, take off and go to a festival, tune them all up, sell them. I come home with 1 or 2 or 3 leftovers, and they chose well. They were the poorest sounding of the group. Well, I'd go back to the workshop, build instruments, probably already had them started. All of a sudden, it's time for a festival. Get them strung up, tuned, run to the festival, set them up, and tune them again, and people would choose. And guess what they would pick first? The instruments that were left over from the last festival. They had already improved in voice over a period of a month or 2 months or so. There's with all instruments, it's not just hammered dulcimers. But there was one other phenomenon. I used to match whatever the end rail would, the long and the short end rail. If it was walnut, I had walnut bridges. If it was curly maple, I'd have maple bridges. If it was Paduke, I'd have Paduke bridges, and so on and so forth. So I started paying attention to the sounds of those woods. And sure enough, those that had rosewood end rails had rosewood bridges, and they are the warmest sounding of all. The density of the wood, but also just that natural characteristic. Rosewood was God's gift to mankind to help us with our music, to give us better musical instruments to play. It's just special and different. So you might ask, well, why do you use so much mahogany? Because mahogany is not as hard as rosewood, but it's still a very musical wood. It's very, very common in guitar bodies. Usually it's a less expensive wood. Rosewood is very expensive. So it gives you still a warm sound, but get a rosewood body Martin guitar, and it's just got the richest big bottom end of all guitars. So wood choices do have an effect in the voice of an instrument, and where you put it affects it.
Cool. So, I did want to ask too, how did you get your name, Masterworks?
The name? Yes. So just a quick review. I started building in Oklahoma in 79, 80, and 81, moved to Dallas, Fort Worth in 81, worked at good grief. Well, it doesn't matter. I didn't stay there but 3.5 months because I knew I hated it. And that was when I got the call about the place in Fort Worth at the crafts place, the artist, Plaza de Arts. I've always had a hang up on that name. And so that's when I started building full time. And I called myself Wooden Strings. I play on the word wooden. It's made out of wood, so it's a wooden instrument, but Wooden Strings. And did that in, I moved to, from Arlington out to the edge of town and had a half acre, and that's where I put my workshop, and that's where I built instruments until 1991. 1990, I started having terrible back problems. I'm getting to a point that's important.
That's okay. Doing good.
Yeah, when 1990, my back went. It didn't just go out; it blew out. Had 3 different surgical procedures on my L4, L5 disc. No luck. The only thing we were going to be able to do after a year of trying this and trying that, and I was just flat on my back. They fused it, which was great. It went just fine until 10:30 the night of the surgery. All of a sudden, I went into muscle spasms from one end of my body to the next every minute and a half. And that went on for 72 hours. And finally, it stopped. And about 2-3 months later, it was still bad. Went back to the doc. He took x-ray. Oh, good grief. One of those pieces of wood, bone are floating around in your spinal column. So they went back in, got that out, and it went much better. But I still couldn't do anything. It was all I could do to walk from one end of the house to the next. And people were wanting instruments, and we needed to build instruments. I'd had some albums and had some luck with those selling, so we were getting by, but I wanted to keep the instrument building process. So after several months, I finally thought of Mark Tyndall. And Mark Tyndall's a national champion mountain dulcimer player, and he built dozens of beautiful mountain dulcimers and decided to move off to Boston. He just left Oklahoma, but he had moved back. I talked to him about it, and come to find out, he and his brother and parents had all moved to Estes Park, Colorado, of all places. And I told him what my situation was, and I'd like to open a workshop and have 2 or 3 people build instruments for me. And he said, yeah. And on top of that, my brother, Steve, wants to. He was a very experienced woodworker. So that was the beginning of the Masterworks version of Russell Cook's dulcimer building business. And it was there for 3 years. They did great work. Everything went pretty well. But we were wanting to make changes, or I was wanting to improve the design and so on and so forth. It was just so far away, and it was so expensive to get there. But the worst thing was we were having problems with instruments going from that environment to Florida, or to Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, the humid parts of America. They were having glue joint problems because the humidity was often in the teens there for extended periods of time, especially in the winter. But even in the summer, it was bad. So I knew we had to get down out of the mountains. Thought about putting it in Denver, but they didn't want to move out of Estes Park. Well, if I've got to bring it out of Estes Park to fix this, I'm just going to bring it back to Texas. And I planned on bringing it back to Arlington, where we lived. And Dad, I was telling my dad about it here in Bennington. This is my hometown where I came from. And they had built a big industrial building to entice real small businesses to come to Oklahoma from other parts of the country to start doing a startup business, or to a big business to drop off one of the processes they do that doesn't take a large space and can be done away from the big company, the main company. And it was working all of Oklahoma really well. And it was extremely beneficial financially. It was free for 6 months. It was a little bit of nothing for the next 6 years. And it was a great facility, heavy electricity. So we moved to Masterworks here. You asked about Masterworks, the name. Where did we come up with the name? I should have stopped when I got to Mark and Steve Tyndall. That was when we actually started Masterworks, and thought about it. And, you know, we want to be really good at what we do. And since we're Christians, we want to be about what God wants us to be and do. And so that came around to being a master of our work and to be about the work of the masters. So that's where Masterworks came from.
I love it.
I, do-
I actually knew the answer.
you
I
were
just
fishing,
wanted
weren't you?
yes, and I
So
love that. Seriously, that was is Kelly still here? Kelly, can you unmute? Do you mind? I don't, there you are.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes. Do you mind relating the story about what you said when you bought an instrument and sold an instrument?
Okay, when I first got my very first one?
Yes. The one that I think went to Lucy.
Yes. Well, I had a couple of different surgeries and lost my voice. I've always sang ever since I was a little girl in different groups, and my husband and I and my family. And during some neck surgeries, the Lord saw fit to allow me to lose that voice. And so I fell in love with the hammered dulcimer, and I was looking for one and just figured I'd never be able to afford it. So believe it or not, I found one on eBay. And I kept looking and looking and looking at it and thinking, this would be really crazy to buy an instrument sight unseen through eBay. But I kept looking at it, and I started emailing with this lady. Come to find out, she was a believer. It was her sister's instrument who had recently passed away. And she had absolutely no idea of what the instrument was and couldn't play it. So long story short, we started talking on the phone, and she told me that, she said, I think this instrument is supposed to come to you. I have a friend, and the two of us been praying about where this instrument should go because I want it to go where the Lord would have it to go. So it's on eBay. It's up for auction. And I told her, I said, you know what? I said, I'm going to keep watching it. I said, chances are it's going to go higher than what I can afford. She called me back the next day and said, nope, it's supposed to be yours. I'm going to click buy it now. And so we got on the phone together, and she set it up so I could buy it now. As soon as she clicked it, I clicked it on the other end, and it came clear from Texas. And I kept in contact with her for several years, and we've kind of lost in touch now. But it was just kind of cool because it was obvious that the Lord was giving me that instrument.
It was a Masterworks, right?
And it was a Masterworks, absolutely. Yep.
Okay. So from there, I'm teaching at a homeschool group once a week, and there was a girl in the group who absolutely fell in love with the hammer dulcimer, and she wanted one, and she said the same thing. I don't know if I can afford this. And on the way home, forgive me, everybody, I know you're not supposed to do this. On the way home, I started looking on my phone to look, and you had posted it where? Somewhere, Facebook?
I had put it on a couple of different marketplace locally, and then I put it on a couple of different dulcimer groups.
So I saw
Dulcimer Players News or one of those couple.
So I called her and I said, and you had people in your area wanting it. Is that right? And she's in Michigan.
Yes, I did. And I had also put on there that I would not ship.
Right. So I called her, and we both found out that your daughter, somebody does homeschool groups.
Yes.
And so I said, can you please not sell it? I mean, she had somebody local who would buy it. And I told her the situation, and this girl is a Christian too. And it all just worked out. And she let it go. You shipped it, didn't you? They were supposed to.
I did.
I think you shipped it.
I did ship it.
I told it's one of yours. And I told her, I said, this is a long line of history, and don't take advantage of what you've got there, But I thought that was very, Kelly, I think that was very sweet and generous and cool of you to do that, because you could have not had to deal with anything. Somebody come to your house and you sold it,
Well, I had also prayed about it. I said, Lord, I want to sell this instrument, but I would also like it to go to the right person. It came to me, and I would like it to go to the right person also. So the Lord just worked that out. I had no doubt. And you'll be glad to know, Russell Cook, that I actually purchased one of the like Ruth Smith editions of yours from Pam Bowman.
Oh, good.
So that was my new one, and I absolutely love it.
Well, good. Don't you love those extra low notes?
Probably a couple more. I do. I'm sorry. We just stopped. We were up north camping and just ran through Dairy Queen. And my ice cream is melting, so you just got me with a mouthful of ice cream. I'm trying to keep it from melting, but yes, I do, and I'm really hoping to really work on using all those extra notes. The bass notes are fantastic, and that's what I fell in love with. Really, is the bass notes. So I could do more.
Kelly, I think of those bass notes simply as a bass guitar or a cello. It's just like the tonic notes. If you're in the chord of D at a particular time in a song, as soon as you can find time to reach over and hit that low octave lower D, it just resonates underneath while you're playing in D. And then when you change to G, you do the same thing. You try to hit that G note. And sometimes you don't have time to be able to get it. That's okay. But just start with that. Just a slower piece. Sweet Hour of Prayer. Sweet Hour, space, space. So that's an excellent example of a song that has a dead space that you have time to reach over and hit a bass note. And it will resonate underneath it. The lower you go in pitch, the longer the strings, the bigger the diameter of the string. And so they always are going to sustain longer.
Right.
But it dies down. And when you switch to the next chord, it overwhelms that little bit of bass that's still echoing underneath. So.
Okay. I will work at that. I've been trying to utilize some runs and stuff with the bass. And just run all the way up in some certain songs too, and I just absolutely love it. I haven't utilized the upper ones as much yet, but that is my goal for this winter, to figure out how to use more of even the upper notes, more of the chromatics.
Yeah, more chromatics, and also it has higher pitch notes that go above the normal E. Your instrument now ends with an F. Which is a big deal. That gives you the key of F at the top of the treble bridge, which means you have a lower octave of F on the bass bridge. So you've actually got 2.5 octaves of F and 2 octaves of B flat at the top of the instrument. So you can actually play some songs in that key up there. And then those extra notes are just above F. The next note, those 3 very highest notes on the left, are G, A, F, G, A, B. Is that a B? No, it ends on an A. Oh, it's F sharp, G, and A. That's what it is.
Right.
F sharp, G, and A.
Hey, I wanted to read a couple of these things. Somebody wrote, "Thanks, Russell. As a mountain dulcimer player, this was fascinating information." Somebody wrote, "Thank you, Brett and Russell. This has been very interesting, but I have to go." Becky wrote, "I play mountain dulcimer also, but this has been very informative program, especially learning about Quarantune. Thank you very much." So, and it has, that was very cool to see all that. I didn't realize it was that big. You have me fascinated with that ebony, not the real fancy ebony, but that other one that you showed.
Black and white ebony, yes.
No, not the black and white. The other one that just had ebony and had the abalone around it.
Oh yes.
Yeah, that was gorgeous. So
it's in 2 different ones. One is a copy of Pam Bowman's Crazy Bocati. It has that, and then Heather's big Dulce Forte has the pure ebony end rail. A Gaboon. There's Gaboon ebony, which is just looks like a piece of plastic. And then there is what is the one that's brown and black? It's black, but it has brown streaks running through it. There's another name, and then the third one is the black and white ebony. And there's, I believe, the same exact species. It's just where that tree is growing, the soil variation, the minerals in the soil that give it different colors.
Right. Does anybody else have any other questions before we go? So
if you're ever in, speaking of the exotic woods, if you're ever in Charm, Ohio, southeast Ohio, and it's a beautiful town. It is truly charming. It's Amish country. Many years ago, someone decided they were, it's a huge Amish area there, not just a community, but a whole section of 2 or 3 states there. So they set up a wood distribution business there. And if you've ever been, how many of you have ever been to Bass Pro Shop? It's a big sports shop. I mean, they have everything, and they always have an aquarium with big fish in it in there. Well, it started in Springfield, Missouri, just north of Branson, down in southwest Missouri. So the original one is just over the top, crazy huge. You can't see it all in one day. And they have restaurants inside, and you can sit there and eat, so on and so forth. And this wood store called Keim, Keim, I think, in Charm, Ohio, is the Bass Pro Shop of woodworking. Everything of any kind you can imagine. And then they have this big room full of exotic woods from all over the world. It's just a real cool place to go.
Yeah. Anything else? Anybody? All right. Don't forget to sign up at Quarantune if you haven't done it yet. And
plenty of workshops.
Yeah, yes, lots of workshops.
And 5 concerts.
Right.
I just wanted to thank Russell for taking a few minutes there to give me some hints on how to work with this new Dulcimer. And I appreciate your input and giving me some ideas. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here.
So this will be.
Brett, thank you so much for having us. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Everybody enjoys this. I still don't have as many people out doing this as I'd like in our group, but this will be posted on Facebook. It'll be on YouTube. I'll give you the link. You can do whatever you want with it. And I'll probably cut this part out. But I thank you for doing it. I know it, and I've told everybody in our group, for you to do this or anybody to do this, you're giving your time and your effort, and that's why I like everyone to be there. So, but this was really interesting. I like this. This was good.
Good. My pleasure.
All right.
Nice to meet you all, and maybe we'll do this again. Come. I've got 2 workshops in Quarantune. I'll be doing the same ones twice. I'll have 2 bare bones beginner. And the most important thing is I've literally explained what a hammer dulcimer is and how it's tuned and played to literally millions of people. I did craft shows. There would be 50,000 people a year at each show. And festivals, dulcimer festivals, and all that, concerts and whatnot. And every single one of them, I had to explain what a hammer dulcimer is and how to do it. Anyway, I have a unique, experienced opinion on how to visualize and look at a hammer dulcimer. I know there are many different opinions, but when it comes down to it, how many dulcimer players do you see reading music and playing a hammer dulcimer?
Right.
It's impossible. You got to look down at the instrument all the time. And you can look at music and figure out a song, but you're going to memorize that song and play it by looking at the hammer dulcimer. Right. So anyway, it's a great workshop, even for some folks who have probably gotten past that bare beginning level. And then the other workshop used to be called Hammer Dulcimer Mechanics, but it's called Feeding and Care of Your Hammer Dulcimer. And basically it's just, when do I need to replace my strings and how do I do it? What hammer should I play with? And stands, cases, but mostly about the hammer dulcimer itself. Explain about the bridges, the Delrin rod, how to get less sustain out of the instrument or how to get more sustain, and what's the difference between steel strings and brass wound strings, and even phosphor bronze strings. Why do you use 3 different kinds? Just any question you can possibly come up with, we'll talk about it.
Good. That actually sounds interesting to me. And I've been playing a while, but that sounds pretty interesting.
Well, you'll have better questions probably than anyone else. So come visit. It's only $10.
Yeah. So I would encourage everybody to try it. And you all know what I'm not going to go over that. I've posted that on Coffee, what I'm teaching, but I've got like 9 workshops I think I'm teaching this time. And Russell, do you know what night you're playing for the concert?
I'm not playing.
Oh, you're
not.
Okay.
I've got carpal tunnel in both wrists and both elbows. I've had the right arm worked on recently, fixing to do the left arm. But I think it goes beyond carpal tunnel, and I can demonstrate, and I can do woodworking and such, but performing is literally impossible for me right now.
I will tell you all this because I do notice this stuff. If you go to the concerts, now I'm going to put pressure on you, Russell. If you go to the concerts and you watch the people, I don't know if everybody has access to what we see, but Russell and his wife are always cuddled up together with his. Well, I think that's very sweet, and they're just very loving together, and it's very nice to see.
The staff, all the teachers, performers, have a sort of like a backstage pass,
green room,
and the green room, and you can just sit there and we'll be texting each other, and I get into crazy conversations with Mark Wade and Katie and Jess and all, but it's fun, and it's the closest thing to being to a real festival than or concert without actually being there. We're having to still be very careful concerning COVID because of Merla. She had a terrible incident January 5th. She had severe septic shock, which is usually deadly, and it turns all the organs off and starts shutting her down. And we had to do CPR for her on the way to the hospital and all that sort of thing. And Doc sees her every month. He doesn't want to go very long without seeing her. Anyway, long story short, she's still recovering from that. The body, it takes about a year to 2 years for the body to fully reorganize all of its organs working together. I mean, it's unexplainably complicated, and she's fine. She just, she can work hard for an hour or two. She's got to sit down for a little while, and that just gets better and better and better. But most importantly, said her immunity would be real weak because of that. So that's I'm not going to Winfield to the Walnut Valley Festival for that reason. I could go by myself, but then if I got something, I'd just bring it home to her. So it's not worth the risk at this point. We've made it through pandemic, so we're going to sit tight for the rest of this year and hopefully get back out and meet and greet more next year.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. I'm going to stop recording. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. And we will have a mid-month jam. Wait, I can give you the date because I was looking it up already. Probably we do this every month. September, probably the 17th, which is a Saturday night at 8 o'clock. So I'll send you out information on that. So thank you all for your support, for being here. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Russell. And we'll see you all in Quarantune, hopefully, if not after that. All right. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.